happens to them? Don't stand there like fatted cattle. Will you answer me?
Now, this is fascinating. And
Right.
I like to, this is such a big subject to untangle. That's also why I wanted to speak to you about your piece that you wrote, because it's so complex, but it makes a lot of sense. So if you don't mind, I'd just like to read some of your words back to you, which kind of sums up what you're saying. So lost in the genetic scramble of long-term socialism would be the many individuals genetically predisposed to be neither ruthless enough to ascend the party ranks, nor sheepish enough to take their subjugation quietly. These folks, which we consider normal people today, would be selected against. And then later on in the piece, you make an allusion to how, let's see, over the last 5,000 years or so, however, an increasingly larger percentage of human beings have been living under authoritarian governments and hence have faced the same bidirectional selective pressure towards ruthless exploitation on the one hand and gullible submission on the other, hypothesized to occur under socialism, which is just a specific type of authoritarianism. In short, so many people may have caved into lockdownery in 2020 so quickly and thoroughly because they were genetically predisposed to follow a herd led by those predisposed to exploitative leadership.
Right. So I don't think we're Morlocks and Eloy yet, but some portions of our population are starting to show characteristics of each group, which I think partly explains why the Morlocks, the political class, break their own rules. They don't care. They actually see themselves as masters rather than as elected democratic rulers.
Yeah. And
why so many people just took it, because they're the ranchers, they're the farmers, they're the masters. We don't question them. We all call ourselves pigs, but some pigs are more equal than others, right? And they are the ones. And when you're talking about genetic changes, then you can start to say things like they're the ones who are naturally superior and naturally the leaders of the rest of us.
Now, what's also interesting.
The problem with all this, though, is there's still a bunch of people in the middle who are more in that, let's trade. We don't need a lot of government.
Yeah.
Sort of group, genetically and culturally. Yeah. And we find both of these other groups abhorrent.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of where maybe you and I sit, and many other people who have been crying out, decrying the lockdowns and decrying this authoritarianism. Now, one thing that I think has been interesting that's been happening as well is that the people who have been decrying lockdowns have been scapegoated by what we would like to call maybe the herd or the submissive folk, who and why do you think that is?
It's that they don't want to be associated with the bad activities of folks like us, questioning the lockdowns and masks and vaccine mandates and so forth, right? They're afraid that the Morlocks, the ruling class, will conflate us, because the first rule of husbandry, of animal husbandry, right, is that you always call the most problematic members of the herd. That helps to perpetuate the goals of the rancher, which is to have the most docile herd possible. Mm-hmm. So you don't want this remnant group of people who still believe in individual liberty and markets and whatnot. You don't want them reproducing. Yeah. if you can at all help it, right? So you need to cull them at least reproductively, if not completely. which is frightening, a frightening prospect. And I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's going to happen now. These are just tendencies that, I've seen working out over thousands of years. And unfortunately, there's no sign of them going away.
Well, what's interesting too, though, is that this kind of untamable instinct that some people have, which is nature and nurture, the combination of both. So I'll just use the word instinct, but let's say untamable behavior and untamable morality. It seems, though, to be something that I would like to hope would never be completely eliminated. Like, I don't think that it's possible. I think that there's part of nature that has this balance ingrained into it, and so maybe we're moving out of whack. But I think that there has to be a center in anything natural, right? So I don't believe that it's possible that everything becomes polar opposite. I think that there will always be that middle ground, but to what extent is the question. Do you know what I mean? What do you think about that?
I do. Well, there would have to be an environment or an ecosystem, a political system, in other words, where this group of natural humans, who still have the genes and the upbringing for the big market and the small government to thrive. Then that part of the genome could stay alive, or we could possibly see a three-way speciation. We have Morlocks, Eloi, but also what we would consider normal humans still living as well.
Yeah. Well, I would like to believe that is what it would be, and that will remain. And I think that maybe a potential solution to all of these trends and this speciation would be, and many people are talking about this, for the so-called normal humans or the more middle ground independent humans, to maybe start to create parallel communities. And this is happening, this actually comes to another piece that you wrote about workarounds. So the more that you have these authoritarian mandates, and the more that you have this separation, that you actually see that people are figuring out ways to work around it all. And do you see this developing in groups online where they say, okay, well, let's actually create our own markets. And that includes for schooling, for education, for trade, so it's interesting because this is also kind of bringing these groups of people back to the model that they lived in prior to 5,000 years ago, prior to that shift, where they're becoming actually kind of tribal again.
Yeah, that's right. I've also called for the creation of parallel university systems.
Yeah.
That would be completely separate from in the United States and in our weird political economy of higher education. Mm-hmm. And I just heard last night that a video site called Rumble has teamed up with Locals.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what Locals is, but
that's Steve Rubin's,
the fellows
outfit.
Yeah, Rubin, right. Yeah. They're going to try to create, I don't know if it's a separate internet or somehow wall off a portion of the internet so that they can't be parlorized.
Wow. Very good.
Or killed off like Parler was earlier this year.
Yes. Oh, that's so great. Well, that's really good news. And there's also like Odyssey, which of course AIER has their channel, which is put onto Odyssey, which is also a blockchain technology. That's using the ledger of library. So basically these videos will remain as long as, I think people will continue to try to, in the same way that they try to delete Bitcoin in certain countries. But there's always those workarounds, and that's creating a lot of innovation. So that's a silver lining there.
We do have on our side the fact that we are independent thinkers, and so we can think up creative workarounds. But as I pointed out in that one piece, the authoritarians, the Morlocks, the political class have very strong incentives to react to everything that we do. And in increasingly harmful and potentially violent ways.
Yeah.
So I'm somewhat of a pessimistic, cynical person by nature.
Yeah.
You seem more optimistic. The truth is probably somewhere in between.
Yeah.
And it's just, we can't know for sure how things are going to play out, especially in the short run.
Yeah. Well, some days I feel pessimistic, other days I feel optimistic. And sometimes I'm kind of reacting to the person that I'm speaking with because, again, balance is inherent in nature as well. And in nurture, you see, these are my chosen actions. And so again, that is kind of the good news here, is that I think we'll somehow find our way out of this mess. But to what degree and what will that look like? Maybe the authoritarianism will just continue forward for a very long period of time. Maybe the species will deviate, but I think that there will be a strong core of people who are like-minded and who refuse to be tamed.
We might have to become Martians, but better a free Martian than an enslaved human, right? Enslaved Earthling.
Right. I hear someone's working on the project, so. Okay, wonderful. Well, I think that this is a great place to leave this chat. And you know what you say, thankfully, we are not yet all Eloi. The next time somebody accuses you or your political party or your ideological affinity group of social Darwinism, tell them you want to help the poor to thrive by supporting policies that increase productivity and that allow people to help the unfortunate through charity, insurance, and other voluntary mechanisms. Also tell them about Socialist Darwinism, and the selective pressures that could lead by 800,000 AD, if Wells was correct, but sooner with the help of eugenic policies or direct genetic manipulation, which is something we may see, to speciation and a form of human domestication much worse than any mere slavery. So there is the warning to the viewers of this episode. And let's see if we can start a conversation about this and have people go read your piece and let us know what they think about Socialist Darwinism.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Robert.
What's happening?